time to get your fix. Come on down, get your horrible gaming review. 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 Wow.
Hello, my name is Zach Rye with Old Man Gaming, and welcome to another horrible game review. Man, am I excited about the game I'm reviewing today. I had so much fun playing this, and I can't wait to get into it. But before I do, I've got to go over some disclaimers. Number one, the word horrible in the title of this video does not necessarily refer to the game or content that I am reviewing, but much more so the actual quality of the review itself. I do snap judgment reviews here. I get about 4 to 10 hours with the game, and I'm trying to give you an idea whether you're going to like this game picking it up from jump or not. Because of that, I also do not give scored reviews for video games. I don't believe in them. I think it's one of the most subjective forms of art. So therefore, I'm going to give you an overview of what the game is as a whole. Then I'm going to tell you the pros and the cons of the game in my point of view, as all reviews are. And then I'm going to tell you whether I personally will be sticking with the game after the purposes of this review have been completed. So with that out of the way, let's get into it, because today I reviewed Darkest Dungeon. It has finally hit Games Pass. It hit it, if you're watching this review on Monday, it hit it last Thursday, and I managed to eke in this about 6 hours required to do this review. And can I just say, this right off the bat, this is a game that I have been circling around since it came out. I saw the reviews were great. It just has a cool aesthetic. There was some interesting ideas behind it that I liked, but I always stayed my hand because usually turn-based games don't do it for me. Usually I stay away from those types of games. But man, was I wrong. I am glad, however, that it's coming to Games Pass and I can try it guilt-free, and to find out that I'm absolutely obsessed with this game. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. What is Darkest Dungeon? Okay, Darkest Dungeon is a very strange one. Kind of hard to describe, so I hope you will also be watching the video footage of this to get a kind of a better idea of how it plays, because I'm going to do my best. Basically what happens is you start right off the bat with two characters who are making their way to a rundown hamlet that has been overrun with corruption. In other words, it's kind of a land that used to be owned in prosperity, and it's been overrun with monsters and bandits and creatures and all sorts of the things. You, the person who is playing, is not a character in the game, but you are the person who is gifted this hamlet. Like it's next in line to you, basically. And then the two heroes that are going with you are escorting you there. Your stagecoach crashes, and then you move through the first tutorial dungeon, which gives you kind of a base idea of how to play, before you actually arrive at the hamlet. Now, the hamlet's all run down. There's just one crazy-ass caretaker there who kind of does all the stuff that you need him to do, while also interestingly enough, migrating from position to position to some of the stress relieving things. And then basically the idea behind this is you'll go into a dungeon, you'll do that dungeon, then you'll come out, and a week has passed. In that week, more characters arrive. You get to hire the characters you want. Each character is procedurally generated, so it's got their own stats, their own class, their own abilities, and then what makes this game really interesting, the quirks. Quirks being like, randomly your character will be a kleptomaniac. They have to steal, so everything they run into, they've got to try and get it, even though it could be booby-trapped. Maybe they've got another one where they're loud, they attract monsters more. Other ones where they're afraid of certain things. And then other positive quirks are like they're really good at walking in the dark. Maybe they've got a bit of night vision, stuff like that. Then the loop proceeds as such. You pick a team of 4 to go into one of the dungeons that are available to you. Each dungeon procedurally generated in certain different biomes or areas. And then you go in and try and get out with all your people intact. There is a punishing amount of difficulty to this game. I'm playing on normal and I've lost some characters here or there, and I've definitely definitely have to think about all my choices. I also talked to another person in the community who had a very hard time on the easiest difficulty, and he's no joke when it comes to gaming. So the RNG is real here and sometimes makes things very difficult. Nonetheless, you'll pick these 4 characters and you'll move through the world in kind of a strange side-scrolling way. It's 2D from the side, even though you're almost moving through it in 3D via the map. So the map itself is 3D, and you get to decide which way you go when you reach each junction point, and then each room can have a bigger challenge, maybe a chest, maybe something else. The hallways themselves also have sparsely different things, possibly chests, possibly weird events that you can attempt, or just battles and ambushes. Now, what's even more interesting about this is the game is constantly governed by the amount of torchlight you have above you. Now, you can actually let your torchlight dwindle. If you do that, though, the bad guys get harder and more regular, and your characters take more stress, which we're going to get into in a second. But the loot drops are more rewarding. If you keep the light high, though, you take less stress to your people, and there are less bad guys, but you don't get as big rewards. You see where this is going. Now, when I talk about stress, probably one of the most interesting additions to this roguelike dungeon crawler type game is the fact that each character has a stress meter. Basically, as you crawl through things, as they take damage, as they get hurt, as they get ambushed, as they're in the dark, as they see things that scare them, their stress will slowly climb. You can do things to reduce their stress. Anytime they kill a monster, their stress goes down. Anytime they get certain buffs, their stress goes down. There's certain abilities that allow them to refocus and get the stress down. If the stress meter maxes out, they go crazy and they can become any sort of things, from attacking their teammates to just irrational and not able to take commands, all sorts of things. How do you manage the stress? Well, when you get back to town, presuming your people don't die in the dungeon, you unlock a tavern, you unlock an abbey where people can either pray, or they can go to the tavern to get a drink, or other things, if you know what I mean, and for a gold cost to reduce their stress levels, but they can't be used for that week that they're gone. What's even more interesting is certain crazy random events can happen in this area. Like, I sent my plague doctor to go pray in the abbey, and he just randomly decided to go on a pilgrimage where I lost him for two full weeks. He just kind of walked off into the darkness looking for the whatever. Stuff like that is really interesting in this game. You never know what's going to happen, and this game is about constantly dealing with the crises that arise. That's something I really like. This game really has that playground to it where you are just given this area, these set of rules, and you get to decide how you play, how you put your team together, how you go in, how you quest. It's very interesting in that way. The story itself and all the beats are delivered to you by a narrator who does his job impeccably well. And I know what you're going to ask next, especially after Biomutant. Does the narrator talk too much? I can say the narrator talks exactly the right amount. It never feels like it's too much. He's always there right when you need him, right when he's necessary to say something interesting. But that is the game in itself from what I can see. Obviously, you get higher and higher dungeons. As you complete dungeons in certain areas, that area gets higher level, so the challenge just keeps going up. And the idea is go in, do as much as you can, get out with as many people as you can, manage stress, take a different team in, and just keep rotating in and out. And it's just a very, very satisfying loop. So that I haven't obviously gotten too deep into the story, but that's basically the crux of this game. So let's get into the pros and cons. All right, as usual, let's go pro first. Number one pro is the builds in this game for your parties. I had so much fun going through the abilities and the special traits of each member, each hero that I had recruited to my roster. There's so many different combinations that allow you to really make effective teams. That really thinking about how you're going to fight things and how these team members work together is really like make or break in this game. An example is early on, I made a team where I noticed there's these abilities that mark certain enemies, and then there's other abilities that do significant amounts of damage when a character is marked. So I put a team together specifically about marking enemies and dealing damage with marking them, and it was just very interesting to play in those battles. What's even more interesting is when you play in those battles against the opponents. It's different it feels different completely. And turn-based for me, one of the biggest problems I have with it is the battles all feel very samey. With this, every battle has so much so much dynamic factors that go into it that you really have to think about every move. And the way that party played was completely different than other parties and also had its own downsides. There was another party I put together where I was using a Man at War, which used a lot of repost and parrying abilities that allowed him to protect other characters, whatever. So I actually put in 3 characters that had significant amounts of healing and significant amount of buff character, and just decided that the Man at War character would just parry and block everything. But he took so much stress from doing that he actually kind of went crazy in the battle, so I couldn't do that. There's so many other different factors, and there's so many classes to this game. I'm putting too many pros into one, but we're just going to go with the build because I want to move on to another one. The second one is the amount of variation for heroes. There are so many classes in this. I am still going in and noticing new classes in the heroes, which I didn't think were possible. Occult members, different types of wizards, different types of thieves, grave robbers, highwaymen, crusaders. There's one class that's called an abomination where and they're so interesting because the one class is the abomination, starts as a normal human who has plenty of good abilities, but he has one ability that allows him to transform into this werebeast, which gives him just ungodly combat abilities. However, it stresses out the rest of the party, so you have to weigh the stress that they're going to be under versus this abomination wolf. That kind of stuff is just so interesting to me. Which brings me to pro number 3, and that is while this game is hard, and basically that's the pro, but it's dynamically hard. It's not hard just like it punishes you over and over again. It's hard like every battle feels make or break. Every battle feels like the end of the world. It feels like if I don't do this right, I'm not going to be able to continue. And that's how it should be. If you were in a medieval fantasy world with your friends questing like this, that's how it would feel. It would feel like every time you came across a fight, it was kill or be killed, which is the way you want it to feel. I loved that about this game. There was so much thought put into the combat that I never even thought of it as a turn-based, even though it is. And that's something that I absolutely love about this game that I can't get enough of. Pro number 4, the personality of this game. Mainly the characters. Now, with procedurally generated games, if there is one stumbling block, it is that because they're procedurally generated, a lot of times it's very hard to connect with the characters that you're playing because they're just like random factors thrown into a pot. Even really great games like State of Decay 2 and Watch Dogs Legion stumble with this every so often. I would make the argument that Watch Dogs Legion does the absolute best at making you feel for the characters that are completely randomly generated. Still, it does stumble here and there. This one, I have not seen a stumble yet. Each one of the characters, from their class to their appearance, feels like different. And what's even more interesting is the whole time you're in the dungeon, they will actually talk to each other, which usually when you're playing a game like this, it's just a static group. They're silent. They just move through from point A to point B. But in this, there's constantly these little like word bubbles popping up over their head because they're having conversations with each other. What's even more interesting is as they start to kind of go crazy, you can actually pick up on those kind of cues of what they're saying above their head as to how they're going to go crazy or what kind of craziness is coming. That's just so cool. It's so nice that I have to be it's not nice, but it's so interesting that I have to be aware of my characters at all time. Not just that they're fighting or just of them as a set of stats, but I have to be aware of my characters. Like, what are they doing? How are they acting? What are they liking? What are they disliking? And that's just such a cool way to approach a dungeon crawler, especially roguelike like this. Which brings me to my fifth one, the stress meter. Man, the stress meter, so genius. And sometimes it's a little unforgiving, I'll say that. It's very, very, very hard to have a character be able to go on 2 quests back to back. I think they did this on purpose because they want you to kind of like have a huge roster of heroes that you have to manage which ones go in each time. You can't just like stick to your favorite 4. Nonetheless, I'd like to be able to take them into at least 2 without them going crazy. That aside, though, the stress level is just such a cool idea, and that's what brings all of this back. It gets you invested in these procedurally generated characters, and it really pulls you in to the dungeon crawling experience. And that's something I like so much. It's not just like a click until I have to do a fight where I click. It's really like I'm experiencing the dungeon with them, and I really enjoyed that. Finally, last pro, I want to give a big shout out to the narrator. He absolutely nails this part. And being a single voice in a game is difficult. Sometimes it's genius, like old school games like Bastion, and sometimes it doesn't work so well, like Biomutant. It's a challenging role to be in when every line of spoken dialogue is delivered by you, one single person, and this guy does a great job. The director of this game also does a great job of knowing when he should be talking and when he should not be talking. All around great jobs. Alright, let's move into cons. As much as I like this game, as much as I'm gushing about this game, it's not without its problems. The number one problem that I had with it, absolutely number one problem, was how little it tells you how to play the game. I did enjoy that it got me into it fast, without a lot of rigmarole or backstory, but still, it really doesn't tell you how to do it, especially if you're on controller. While you can play it on controller, there are absolutely no key prompts that explain anything to you other than what's on the screen in front of you. So they never actually tell you what you should be doing. And once you get into the Hamlet, it's a lot of trial and error. I had to look up a couple of things on Google. I could not, for the life of me, figure out how to attach items to my characters. I had to literally Google that. And that shouldn't be. I shouldn't have such a hard time with that. It took me a lot of time figuring out each little screen that I had to navigate, and they just didn't go through enough of it at the beginning of the game with the tutorial. So it was a little weak in the tutorial. They show you just the basics, and then they're like, hey, go figure it out on your own. And that's not, especially with a game this complicated, a game with this many factors to it. You need to tell me a little bit more right off the bat. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm a dummy. It's well documented. I'm an idiot. You need to treat me as such. Number 2, RNG evil. Look, okay, this game's cool. I really like it. I like RNG. I like procedurally generated stuff. The only problem with this is it's a turn-based, very party-oriented game. With that in mind, and how unforgiving it is in the dungeons, they do not give you a lot of healers. They give you a healer right off the bat, not in the first tutorial mission, but right when you get to the Hamlet, they give you a healer. But after that, it's random what shows up in the stagecoach. So, and as I've already said, you can't take a hero in twice or they're going to go crazy. So it gets very difficult if your random number generator does not like you that day and doesn't give you anybody with healing spells, because there's no healing potions to buy in the provisions. Something I didn't talk about in the overview, each time you go into a map, you have to buy the provisions for that expedition, including torches, shovels, salves, whatever, but none of them are just straight up healing potions. So there's no way to counterbalance not having a healer in your party, which is a little irritating. There should either be health potions that you can purchase in the provisions, or they should give you more healers, and they just don't. I mean, don't get me wrong, I started 2 games just to check out the procedural generation. The first one I had plenty of healers. The second one, I've only gotten 2 healers and I'm like 4 weeks in. It's making things very hard to do because they keep going crazy because I literally have to take them in order to keep my guys alive. So this is a big problem there. And I'm all for the random number generation, but we do need more healers. This was also a complaint that somebody else had in the Discord, and I have to agree with them. I like the RNG, but we need to, like, with how punishing the game is, there needs to be more healing stuff, I guess. That's it. Let's bring it down. Am I going to stick with this? I'm going to do everything in my power to stick with this. I don't know if I'll be able to because there's so many games coming out right now. But I'm going to try my damnedest to stick with this game. I think this game is so much fun. It's one of those games that's like calling me back, and I love that factor that like, ooh, I gotta find some time to play that. So yeah, I enjoy it. I urge everybody to go out there and try it, even if you don't like turn-based games, because I certainly don't. This one just has enough going on that it just keeps me interested anyway. So I hope that helped everybody. You guys can talk to us on Facebook at OhManGamingDH, on Twitter at OhManGaming9. You can join us in the Discord, or you can just comment below. You can tell me, did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? Whatever you want to say to me is totally welcome. And if you join our Discord and you get into our community, who knows? You could end up on one of these shows. We're a very community-forward group here. So, but as usual, regardless of all that, as long as you keep watching it and listening to it, I'll keep making them. We'll see you guys next week.